Channel 1. Channel 1. Channel 1. Channel 1. Channel 1. Channel 1.
Second no to the law. EPP Group has been for months calling on the Vice President Frans Timmermans to withdraw the law, and so far this hasn't happened yet. Now I have here with me two EPP Group speakers, Peter Liese, the spokesman in the Environment Committee, and the chief negotiator in the EPP Group, Christine Schneider. I give Peter the floor immediately. Christine, all right.
Okay, thank you so much. You can believe that I regret, as a shadow rapporteur, that we had to come to such a point today. If the European Commission had taken our concern seriously 1 year ago, we would not be here today. This is not a day for celebration, I want to underline, even though we in the EPP Group have supported rejection. So the Environment Committee also follows the vote of the Agriculture Committee and also of the PESH Committee. And our problems with the law are still the same. The whole EPP Group supports the objectives of the European Green Deal. The fundamental pillars of the European Green Deals are adopted. And the nature restoration law chosen approach is the wrong way to go. The proposal is impractical. It's a view in the past. It's backward looking, and we also think it's ideological programmed. The rejection of the Agri and the PESH Committee and today of the ENVI Committee cannot be ignored. You know our concerns about the food security. We would lead to a decline in agriculture and forest land. We have studies who declines in the food production, and the Commission study from January this year also underlines that low-income households can already not longer afford a balanced and healthy diet, and ignores the problems of the growing population all over the world, and ignores also the problems of the climate change and compatibility with existing legislation. I underlined also in the last press conference, we have 23 different Natura legislation to save biodiversity, and at the moment we don't know how it will work together with the nature restoration law, for example, Natura 2000 and fauna, flora, habitat. And I also want to underline that with the proposal of the Commission, the Montreal targets are not fulfilled. It's go further, and we have not one-to-one implementation of the Montreal Agreement. And the political dimension, at first, Timmermans, you know, he put pressure on some MEPs of different political groups. And today, what I read, what our chairman of the Environment Committee did is not acceptable. We have a democratic vote in the Environment Committee. And we have democratic votes in Agri and PESH Committee. And it's not okay that now he try to ignore. It's not acceptable that only democratic votes are accepted when are in line with the chairman. That's not acceptable. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Christine, for all your work. And I would also extend my thanks to everybody that worked for the result that we have. We don't like it. We would like to have another proposal. Timmermans should have answered our questions. But in this situation where we have such a bad proposal on the table, it was for us the only alternative. And I was quite shocked how Pascal Canfin not only disrespects his role as the chair of the Envy Committee, the chair has always defend the vote, if he likes it or not. You know, Pascal Canfin is the worst and most partisan chair of the Envy Committee I ever experienced, and I'm here since '94. We have had S&D chairs that were doing a proper job, and from many other groups, so this never happened before. And the strange thing is that today 4 colleagues from Renew voted with us. Are they also Trumpists in the image of Pascal Canfin? Did he mean Jan Huitema? Did he mean Mr. Glück from Germany? Emma Wiesner? Emma Wiesner is from the opposition in Sweden. She told me her party is more green than the normal Renew groups. In Germany, they would be between the Greens and the German Liberals, the FDP. She voted against. Is she Trumpist? Did it say what Pascal said? The colleagues from the French Renew, voted in PECH and in Agri against the proposal. Was it those colleagues that Pascal meant? Ask them. Go out, ask for the Renew colleagues that voted against today, and for the French Renew colleagues that are in Agri and in PECH, how they value what Pascal Canfin said today. And many people say that EPP is spreading fake news. You know, when Donald Trump was criticized, he also always said that it's fake news. Now, when somebody says it's fake news, please go deeper and look at the content. Sometimes it's not black and white, sometimes it's gray. And it's your job, I think, to look at the differentiated things. So why did we reject? The proposal is bad. We have serious concerns, really believe it, on food security. Christine Schneider will elaborate if you wish. And for me personally, the main reason was that this law, in a lot of parts, is against our climate targets. There is a whole article that obliges the member states to restore 25,000 kilometers of rivers, bring them back in their natural state, which means to de-establish hydropower. Those that are doing hydropower, in my country, for example, said, are you crazy? We need more hydropower. We can't do everything with wind and solar, especially because they are not stable. Hydropower is much more stable. There's no provision that the necessary establishment of a grid to bring renewable energies from the parts in Europe where it is to the parts where it's needed, there's no provision. Biomass will be more difficult with this law. So that's all against our climate agenda and against being less dependent from Russia and other parts of the world like Qatar. That's why we voted against, and I'm an environmental politician, and for many, many years I fight it, even inside my group, for more ambition. But I stand in favor of this rejection because this law is bad, it's contradictory, and for some it's just too much. We have a very ambitious agenda in the European Union, and please, 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 look at the 27 legislation that the Environment Committee accepted. Today, 2, air quality and water. Is anyone here in the room who knows what we voted on water? Timmermans is doing too much and he's doing it bad. We have 27 legislation adopted, and I doubt that anyone can really explain what is the content of all these 27 legislations. Even Timmermans is not able. When you ask him on concrete facts, he's not able to explain. So, and the people, the farmers, the SMEs, they have to implement all this. And I understand that they are frustrated. You know, we want to work with them. We want to take them along. We want to do it in a way that people, farmers, SMEs understand what we do and help us to implement our goals. But when we are doing too much and when we are doing it so bad, this is a problem. And that's the reason why we once in 28 cases, we managed to get a stop, a red light. So that is not against the Green Deal. If anybody has this interpretation, please explain me. I will understand if you have good arguments, but I don't think you can. So, sorry for being so emotional, but Pascal Canfin provoked me a lot. And I repeat, he's the worst and most partisan president of an ENVI committee that I ever experienced since '94. Thank you.
Yes, as we can see, emotions are running high, but let's move quickly to the questions. The meeting is taking place also online. The journalists in the room will have priority when it comes to questions. I suggest we take questions in a group of 3 questions. Please say the name of the media you work for when you take the floor. Let's start here in the first row, and then we go back.
Thank you. Kira Taylor for Euractiv. So I'm not sure how much you heard of the previous press conference, but we heard some stuff about EPP having substitutions and a clear message that that was because there were people within the EPP who would have voted for it in ENVI and that they were substituted in order to get rejection. So maybe your comment on that. And also regarding the general approach met in the Council. So obviously countries, including Germany, saw fit to support that, despite the hydropower issue that you've mentioned. What's your view on the general approach and countries supporting it in general? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Claire Stam, Table Media. Again, a question following the previous press conference. And your predecessor said the text included almost all your compromises, your amendments, and yet now you want to reject the text and you stepped out of the negotiations. So what do you say to that?
Okay, shall we go already?
Yeah, I try to do it short. So first of all, on the substitutions, I heard the answer of Pascal for the last question. We had many substitutes, that's true. The reason was that we wanted to be on the safe side and we appointed substitutes that are not ENVI members because that has to be done in advance. There were 7 colleagues that are members of ENVI committee in the room just in case something happened, a health accident, a private issue. So we had many people that are members of ENVI in the room. They were ready to replace, but to be on the safe side, in case something happens, the rules require us to appoint a substitute that is not a member of ENVI in advance. And that's why we had so many non-ENVI members voting. We have one colleague, Stanislav Polčák. This is public. He announced that he is in favor of the proposal in principle. When I talked to him, he was not so 100% clear what he will do in the final vote in plenary. He doesn't like the proposal, but he may like an amended proposal. But that was the only one who clearly said, if I'm voting, I will vote not surely against the law. The other colleagues were not sure. They didn't feel comfortable. They wanted to look at the result from the council. But there was no enforcement. So we talked to colleagues, and when they said we don't feel comfortable, they asked for the replacement themselves. So what Pascal said is not my perception, and I'm the coordinator. In the council, the majority was very, very narrow. One member state, even if it would have been a small member state, would be enough to have no majority in council. And personally, I was surprised that in the morning everybody counted on a no vote for Hungary, and finally they voted in favor. I don't know what happened. Maybe you can find it out. I think it's not a stable situation. So to build European environmental law on 1% majority, I don't know if this is a good basis for taking people along and get enough public support. And Germany vote, ask the FDP. The FDP is in the government in Germany, and they voted against today, and they announced to vote in plenary. So that is an issue that the German FDP needs to discuss with their ministers in the German government. The other question is for Christine, I guess.
Yes, thank you so much. I always can promise you that there were a lot of other colleagues out of our EPP group who want to vote today in the ENVI committee because they want to show that they don't support the bad made proposal from the Commission. And to the question, I'm a little bit surprised that Chairman Kaffer is able to have a completely overview what we have voted until now, because we ask for the results of the last vote. You know, we have to vote about 2,500 amendments, and the Secretary told us at the moment it's not possible to give us the overview. We have to wait until the vote today. So it's very impressive for me that our chairman has the completely overview and the rest of the ENVI committee at the moment not. But at the moment, what we can overview about the votes that we have really not really a consensus in the text. For one example, the peatlands are rejected. The compromise about the peatlands are rejected. And on the other hand, the definition what rewetting means has a majority. So it goes completely in other directions. So we have to look also what now is voted. On the other hand, at when someone says all our points are clear, that's not right. The Annex 7 get a majority. In Annex 7, the member states, that is the toolbox for the member states to make their strategy planning for nature restoration. In an Annex 7, there are always the 10% landscape feature to take 10% of agriculture area out of production. There are also a toolbox in that it's not allowed to use pesticides and fertilizer in the future in agriculture, and that are things we cannot support because it endangers our food security, and that's very clear. Our points are always not clear, and I always can repeat. At the beginning we said we need a solid impact assessment on food security. We have it not until now. That changed nothing since 9 months. And so I only can say to Vice President Timmermans, withdraw this proposal, bring a good proposal back on the desktop, and we will negotiate. And I think we can get a good proposal for nature restoration.
Next two questions, John, and then in the back row.
Hi, John Ainger from Bloomberg News. Just to be clear, is there any chance that you will re-enter negotiations before the plenary next month? Obviously, Mr. Liese, you were a key rapporteur on the ETS file. I managed to get that through. I mean, I'm just wondering, from your perspective, is it the right thing to walk away from talks? And just secondly, there's obviously a lot of bad blood right now. Last time we were in this room, there were accusations of threats, and Kamfa as well said that there has been manipulation. How will this affect cooperation and EPP's position on future climate and environmental regulation? Thank you.
Yes, Giovanni De Re from the Italian newspaper Avvenire. So you keep saying that it is against food security, but it's a bit strange that 4,000 scientists have signed a declaration. I can just quote a few lines. Opponents of these new regulations argue that they will have adverse effects on farmers, fisheries, and society at large, suggesting that they will threaten food security and kill jobs. Those claims not only lack scientific evidence, but even contradict it. And we invite opponents of the Green Deal for the open-minded consultation with scientists. And not only scientists, there are a lot of companies from the many different parts all saying that this kind of law is quite the opposite of what you are maintaining. So what you answer to 4,000 scientists saying exactly the opposite? Thank you very much.
We can group a little bit more. There are too many questions.
Okay, let's take a question from the Interaction also. I see Virginie has a question. Please go ahead. Yes, we hear you, but you have to speak in English. There is no interpretation.
Mr. Timmermans asked me to withdraw flow, but I mean, in the end, the President of the Commission is Ursula von der Leyen. He's very proactive on the Green Deal. Why don't you address to Mrs. von der Leyen, which furthermore belongs to your party? And why don't you critique her instead of criticizing Trump?
Okay, you go.
Okay, first I will answer the question of John about the plenary. You know, the situation with ETS was quite different. So we had a majority for the basic principle, and it was, in my view, quite an accident by the Greens and by the SD to vote against the proposal in the first attempt in plenary. There has been a lot of tension behind the scenes. I can tell it from the German Greens. Of course, the German government wanted the ETS, and they don't want to see the Greens in opposition against the ETS. And I will come back again to Emma Wiesner. Now, Emma Wiesner was my shadow rapporteur on the ETS, and she was more ambitious than I was. So I had to talk a lot to find a balanced compromise that would then achieve such a broad majority. And now she voted against, even though she's more ambitious on climate, more green than I ever was, and I'm one of the green guys in EPP. Isn't that an indication, please think twice, that the law is really bad and it is not as easy as some people say? When you are for climate, you need to vote for this law, to this proposal, to this law. It is sometimes against climate. And what we have adopted in the ETS is so ambitious. You should look at it again and again and again. We need to go up to not only 55, but 57%. That's the legislation. And that means climate is an absolute priority. We need to do everything, and I repeat, everything, to achieve these targets. It's 4 times more than we did in the past, and we did a lot. We have an ETS already. We have a new renewables directive. We have eco-design. We have many European instruments, and still we didn't get 1% reduction per year since 1990. Now we want to go to 3.5% reduction. So if this is true, if climate is a priority, other things cannot have the same priority. And when you want to create a wind park, when you create grid, when you want to have more hydropower, you have to do compromises with some other targets like biodiversity. It is possible, but it is not possible with this law. And I think what will happen, of course, there are a lot of emotions. Sometimes I thought Pascal had learned his lessons yesterday on heavy-duty vehicles. He was very constructive against the Greens, very moderate. Today, he's in fighting mode again. I want to see what happens. I think we will get a new equilibrium. Until now, the Green part of Renew, S&D, Greens, and the left thought they can do what they like without the EPP. In the case of controversy, there was always a majority against the EPP. This is over, and I want the EPP in the gravity center of European environmental politics. That means the Greens can't be in the gravity center. They are the 4th biggest group, and even though Renew and Socialists always copy-pasted the Green amendments, I think this time is over. On the 4,000 scientists, only one word. The details are for Christine to explain. You know, to do science and to sign a letter is something different than to do a law. And that, of course, the Green Deal the Green Deal is good for food security because we want to fight climate change. Yes, but this law is sometimes against climate change. And I was with the NGOs, with one important NGO in Germany, the NABU, who very much fights for this law, in my constituency on Friday. And they admitted that we will have less food. They admitted that we will have less food when we implement this law. And when I asked them, what shall we do with food security? The simple answer was, eat less meat. Okay, a fair point. I think we can reduce meat consumption, but not with command and control, and it will take a lot of time. And the funny thing was, in the end of the meeting, they offered me a meal. Not vegan. Meatballs, schnitzel, you name it. So there is a contradiction in those that promote this law. You cannot easily bring food security and biodiversity, climate and biodiversity under one umbrella. It is more complicated. And don't believe the simple answers that some want to spread here. Thank you.
I want to say something about the manipulation now. Kafar said the EPP manipulated. Thank you. The vote. The reason why we left the negotiation desk was because of the behavior from Vice President Frans Timmermans. He took different members in his office and threatened them. And he say very clear, if you don't support the NIL, you won't get this, this, this. This is something we cannot accept. And that was the reason we discussed in our EPP group, and we decided to leave the negotiation table to set a clear sign that this behavior from Frans Timmermans is not acceptable. And today, our chairman, Kafar, goes in the same line. And his behavior shows me if a democratic environmental committee decided not what he wants, then there's manipulation. What is this for understanding about democratic process? We had a long discussion in our EPP group about nature restoration law, and I said it since the beginning of the negotiation, where are the red lines and what are our problems? Since 10 months we repeated that we need a clear, good impact assessment. We have not this until now. And to the things Kafar now said, in Germany wir sagen, der Brandstifter versucht dann Feuerwehr zu spielen. That's not acceptable for us. And for your question about the scientists, I underline what the scientists said. Yes, we need insects and bees in the future to secure our food security. That's right. Nobody in the EPP will not say that's the right way. But the second thing is we need also our farmers and enough areas where our farmers can produce our foodstuff. And if I read what other scientists who support this line wrote, they all say in the European Union we have 23 legislation about nature restoration. So we can do a lot at the moment. So for me, it's clear that we have, or I would discuss with some scientists if they really read all articles, because if I read something, I'm not sure if they really understand where our problems with this proposal is. And I want to underline at the end, we are for biodiversity. We want a good legislation, but on a solid baseline. And for the ladder of the companies, I don't know if you have read it, but look inside and the arguments from one company. There's an argument if the nature restoration law in European Union will not come, in 2050, 50% of the coffee plantations are not able to produce anymore. Do you understand what these companies want? They want greenwashing. And that we won't support as EPP.
Okay, last two questions. The ladies in the middle. There was a question on, in fact, from Le Monde on von der Leyen.
Yeah, I think it's very obvious that Timmermans drafted this law, and Timmermans is the one that did the threats. Ursula von der Leyen didn't do so. So there is a big difference.
So the questions in the middle. Yes.
Yes. I'm just on Ursula von der Leyen again. Now, is that working? Yeah. On Ursula von der Leyen again. It was said, this is her flagship policy. Are you going to meet her or have any discussions with the CDU members?
Okay. And the question behind?
Yes, it's on the plenary. It's Daniel Weber from the Luxembourgish Public Radio. I just wanted to know, are you in favor of the vote taking place actually in July? And are you comfortable? I mean, are you confident that about the outcome? Also, given that you just explained that you had to be on the safe side to replace a lot of people in the Envy committee. So how confident are you about the vote in the plenary? Thank you.
So to the first question, of course we talk to Ursula von der Leyen, but please, 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 the Green Deal is not the nature restoration law. I don't know how you come to this interpretation. We have adopted 27 legislation, including the biggest climate law ever, the ETS. We have adopted LULUCF, which increases ambition from 55 to 57%. We have adopted many, many other legislation, and there are 13 more to come. 13 more to come. That is more than we ever did in the Environment Committee. So how can anyone say to vote against one proposal is to vote against the flagship, against the Green Deal? That is interpretation of some, but definitely not a correct interpretation. We have a comprehensive framework, and I repeat, if there's somebody here in the room who can explain what we have voted, who can explain the details of this 27 legislation and of those that are still in discussion, I'm happy to meet him. I didn't find anyone who has an overview. We are doing not too few legislation. We are already on the edge to doing too much. The Green Deal is a good thing, but we are about to overstretch it. And I think that is to be recognized. So again, if there's anyone here in the room who have an overview about the 27 things, only the ones that we voted already, welcome. Meet me after the meeting. Last point, I don't think we should vote in July. That was already my opinion before the vote today. I reached out to colleagues from S&D and Renew, and I hope the vote will take place in September. We have in July eco-design and industrial emissions. That's already a lot. And again, we try to find an overview and see the consequences for SMEs, for average people, what we are doing here. It's a lot. So if we want to do better legislation, we should do it after the summer.
For me, I hope Vice President Timmermans understand now the signs and withdraw the proposal so that we have not to vote in July or September.
Yeah.
And with that, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you.